All right. Boker Tov. Chag Matzot Sameach. Shalom Aleichem. Good morning. Happy Feast of Unleavened Bread. And peace be upon you. Today, April 17, 2014. Aviv 1759-99. Morning reflections. Just getting right to it. Today's reflection is going to be on a principle or a concept or a teaching called Techiyat or Techiyat, Hametim. The Hebrew translated means resurrection of the dead. We're going to talk about the resurrection of the dead today. So, where can we say we first see the resurrection of the dead? It is insinuated, I do believe, in Exodus 9. And I don't have the exact verse, but it talks about the barley being struck. So it was an early crop. The spelt and the barley was struck in the head because it was an early crop. But the wheat had not yet been struck because it is a latter fruit. And so that's in Exodus. There may be some other scriptures that refer to the resurrection prior to that. That's one of the first very early implications of referring to the harvest and the resurrection. Why is that referred to the resurrection? Because the harvest is related to that. And the harvest, you have to understand, as related to the feast days, is the collection of the fruit into the storehouse. And so with the festival of unleavened bread, you have the first fruits, the feast of first fruits, which is bringing the first fruits of all the barley harvest to the storehouse, which is symbolic of the first fruits, or the first fruit who was raised from the dead. And that took place on the festival of first fruits, which is mistakenly celebrated today as Ishtar, Ashtoreth, Ostre, Asherah, or Easter, which is undoubtedly a pagan festival of fertility. And so during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the 7-day celebration of which leaven is no longer found in the house, the first fruits celebration is also a part of it, in which the barley harvest is brought to the storehouse again, which is symbolic of the first fruit from the dead, who is Mashiach Yahushua, or Messiah Yahushua. And so you later have the wheat harvest, which will be the latter year celebration, or the latter year harvest of fall, bringing all the wheat to the storehouse, which is something we'll talk upon later. But it's very interesting to note that in the book of Matthew, 27th chapter, I believe it's the 52nd through the 54th verse, where you will see when Mashiach dies, right? The great earthquake, it says, and the veil was rent from top to bottom. But also it says the graves of those who had fallen asleep, the righteous who had fallen asleep, were opened. And many of the saints rose from the grave. But what's the explanation for that? How do you explain this resurrection of those who had fallen asleep prior to his coming? Patriarchs and the matriarchs of the faith. Those who were truly set apart and observing Torah in spirit and truth. How do you account for their resurrection? It says it in black letters on white pages, clearly. You account for them for the barley harvest. Okay? That is the barley harvest, because Mashiach was the first to go into the resurrection of life. But while he was in the grave, his body was in a tomb, it is understood that his soul went to Sheol, or the place of the dead. Not Hades, not hell. Those are both Greek myths. But Sheol is the place of the dead where they rest, where they lie asleep until resurrection. Mashiach went there, snatched the keys of death and the grave, and also loosed the captives and brought them from that grave into life. And possibly, don't know exactly where they're held, but he brought them before the heavenly altar, where they are stored until the time of resurrection. Okay? Now, when you read the 14th chapter of Revelation, you will be able to see that there's a distinction between the 144,000 in the 7th chapter and in the 14th chapter. The 14th chapter, when you read it, Yochanan or John asks, "Who are these, Master?" And he tells them, these are those who are undefiled by women. Right? And in their mouth was found no guile. And they follow the Lamb wherever he leads them. Okay? Now, to not be defiled by women is to not be adulterated with the false teachings. Okay? Of course, a strange woman refers to mystery Babylon, or the mystery systems, the mystery religions that are extant in the world and have been extant in the world from time immemorial to present. But these are those who are undefiled by maidens, right? So this is the barley harvest. You have to read the first, I believe, 5 verses of Revelation 14 to really see that and to connect it. And then the 144,000 in Revelation 7, when Yochanan asks, "Who are these, Master?" he tells them, these are those who come out of the great tribulation, who have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. Interesting. So this is wheat. This is the latter harvest. This is the wheat harvest, okay? Now, what corroborates that? If there's, you're telling me there's 288,000 in the resurrection of the 12 tribes, from the 12 tribes of Israel. That's what you're saying, Mikael. Well, yes, I am. This is corroborated by the reality that there are 24 elders seated on the throne. So if you take 12 times 2, you have 24. You have a wheat harvest and a barley harvest, and you take the 12 elders from each of those particular harvests, you have 24 elders. In addition, when you read 1 Chronicles 27, verse 1, it tells you that King David had, I forgot the number that is divided into, but basically he had with him a total of 288,000 loyal servants who followed him new moon to new moon, day in, day out. So this corroborates that. It completely corroborates that. And so what is to be understood is that Israel, the 12 tribes with 12,000 from each tribe, respectively, will bear fruit of 288,000, of which 144,000 has already been risen from the grave with the barley harvest, and now awaits the wheat harvest, which we are in the season of, or the actual season as far as in time period of the end times, the end of age, the end of the age. This is what that accounts for. In addition to that, We have to understand the nature of the resurrection. And I was reading this morning how what is sown is not the same as what is reaped. What is sown is not the same nature as what is reaped. It says in 1 Corinthians 15 that corruption has to put on incorruption, and mortality has to put on immortality. It is also spoken that flesh and blood shall not inherit the kingdom of heaven. It is also written that unless a man or woman be born again, they shall not see nor enter the kingdom of heaven. So what is it saying? Resurrection. The resurrection is intimately tied into the death and burial of Mashiach, Yahushua, and his carnal nature. And you notice he had to set aside his carnal nature, his desire, in order for the Father's desire to be fulfilled. Which is why in Gethsemane, the garden, when he was praying to the degree where blood was dropping from his head in bead form as sweat, he said, Father, if it is at all possible, take this cup from me. He said, but not my will be done, but thy will be done, or your will be done. So this was a submission of wills, so that the Father's will could be done, and that which is eternal, which is the Word, shall be made known and shall come to life. So the parable is as this: as a seed is sown, the seed does not bear fruit unless it first dies. Right? So this relates to a nature. First of all, a nature, a shell, an encasing. Something that encapsulates our true essence of that which is within has to die. And this is what the baptism, the immersion, the mikvah chatashuvah, the baptism or immersion of repentance symbolizes. This is a symbolic representation of us dying to sin and living unto Elohim from that moment forward, consecrating ourselves, which is a resurrection in and of itself. This is what Romans 6 speaks about. This is what 1 Corinthians 15 speaks about. This is what John 3 speaks about. And these are all more expressed in the apostolic writings or the messianic writings, and hinted to in the Torah and prophets. There's a chapter and verse in Isaiah that is not coming to my mind that talks about it. The book of Job, but Job also talks about it, and that's a writing actually. One of the wisdom writings. Job talks about it as well. And so this resurrection that is to take place after the judgment will actually lead us into the messianic age. But in order to attain unto the resurrection, there is first a death that we must all undergo unto our will. Our will must die so that the Father's will may come alive within us. And that is actually a part of the new covenant, the Berit Chadashah, which was spoken of yesterday, having the law written in our hearts, which is expressed most fully by love of the Most High, and love of our neighbor as ourselves. And without that, there is no life. There is no life without understanding that love has to be the epitome of our expression. And there is no resurrection without first dying unto our old ways and our carnal nature, and so that the life of the Father may become evident within us. And that is when we will see a newness. For anyone who is in Mashiach Yahushua is a new creature. They're made new. And everything that is carnal has been put to bed, because a carnal mind is death, but the mind which is of the spirit is life and peace. And this is what we have to understand about the Techiyat, Hametim, the resurrection of the dead. Okay? This is spiritually first. The resurrection has to take place in the spirit before it becomes physical. Okay? This is also a matter of understanding the distinction between Adam Reshit, the first Adam, and the second Adam, which is the second Adam. I forgot how to say two in Hebrew, so please forgive me. Jokes. Anyway, in all seriousness, this is a matter truly of life and death, of understanding our eternal inheritance. And in order to inherit that, we have to really labor in Mashiach to give birth to this reality within ourselves. So as we approach the day of resurrection, it would behoove us to be mindful of these principles, and not only relate the resurrection to one individual while he was alive and died and then rose again, but it's also imperative to understand and relate it to ourselves as well, because we have to also undergo the same exact process of dying to sin, being alive, presenting ourselves as offerings alive to the Father, so that he may raise us with the same spirit that raised his anointed one. So we have to undergo the same exact process. So there's nothing that we do not go through that he did not go through. So he will not be esteemed without us being esteemed, and we will not be esteemed without him being esteemed, because we share in the same process of resurrection and life. So with that, just a couple of reflections this morning. I'm not digging in my nose, I was scratching it, just so you know. It looked like I may have been, but I was not. But anyway, I pray that you all have a blessed day. Yivarechecha Yahuwah vayishmerecha, Ya'ar Yahuwah panav alecha, vayechenucha, Yisa Yahuwah panav alecha, vayisam lecha shalom. May Yah bless and keep you. May Yah cause his countenance to shine upon you. May Yah lift up his face unto you and give you peace. One love, Chag Sameach, Shalom Aleichem.